For as a prince has a power with Elohim and with men, and has prevailed. Because like we had talked about before, in the womb he didn't prevail. This time when he wrestled with the angel, he did prevail. And when he prevailed, his name was changed from Jacob, which meant supplanted, to Israel. So now he is a prince that has power with Elohim. And Jacob asked him and said, tell me, I pray thee, thy name. And he said, where is it that thou doest ask after my name? And he blessed him there. And we just find it very interesting here is that this particular messenger did not reveal to Yahuah what his name is. But we know in Scripture, which is another lesson, is that his name was called, what? Anybody know? Wonderful. Hallelujah. There you go. Yeah. Oh, you just guessed?
Yeah.
So you guessed through the Ruach?
You said what?
Yes. So you guessed right through the Spirit. So, Coach, she's right on time. She is right on time. So the Father said that we are Elohims. Let's go to the book of Psalms 82. We're just going to prove all things. Is it just me? My internet service is working slow. Okay. 82 and 6. It says, can somebody read that for me, please?
I have said, ye are Elohim, and all of you are children of the Most High.
Wow. Wow. What an honor. What an honor, what an honor, what an honor for the Father to put us in a position like that because of the blessing that he gave Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. Okay, what a beautiful place to be in. Mishpachah, we want to go through one more scripture on that. And then we'll hit up a few more things and we'll be done. We'll be done. Somebody can go to the book of John for me. The 10th chapter, verses 34 to 36. These are all scriptures that we know, but I just want to make sure that we bring some of this back to our remembrance. The book of John, the 10th chapter, verses 34, 36.
And Yahusha said, and Yahusha answered them, is it not written in your Torah? I said, you are Elohims. If you call them Elohim rather, unto whom the word of Elohim came, and the scripture cannot be broken. 36 as well?
Yeah, that's it. That's all we wanted to know. I want everybody to understand the position that we're in. What is our role? What is our responsibility? How is the world supposed to be looking at us? What commission did the Father give us? And do we now have that type of relationship that we should be having with the Father? I said that you are Elohim, plural. That is a very big responsibility to be in. Let's go to 2 Samuel, Mishpachah. We're going to turn to a slightly different topic here. 2 Samuel, the 11th chapter, and I'm going to read verses 2 through 5. The 11th chapter, verses 2 through 5. So please pay very close attention because I'm going to have a question. And I need a short answer. Okay? And it came to pass in the evening time that Dawood, arose from off his bed and walked upon the roof of the king's house. And from the roof he saw a woman washing herself, and the woman was very beautiful to look upon. Verse 13. Wait a minute, hold up. 2 Samuel, the 11th chapter, verses 2 to 5. Excuse me, 2 to 5. Excuse me, my fault, Mr. Carr. 2 Samuel, the 11th chapter, 2 to 5. It came to pass at the evening tide that David arose from off his bed and walked. Okay, I was right, yeah, it just keeps slipping down here. 2 and 5. And it came to pass in the evening tide that Dawood arose from off his bed and walked upon the roof of the king's house, and from the roof he saw a woman washing herself, and the woman was very beautiful to look upon. And David sent and inquired after the woman, and one said, Is not this Bathsheba, the daughter of Eliam, the wife of Uriah the Hittite? All right? I should have done this yesterday. Last Shabbat, but I didn't. I'm going to read that same thing from the book of Josephus. The book of Josephus here. Okay, we got page 156. It says here now, this is page 154, the Iniquity of the Jews, page 154, chapter 7. But David fell now into a very grievous sin, though he was otherwise naturally a righteous and a religious man, and one that firmly observed the law of our fathers. For when late in an evening he took a view round him from the roof of his royal palace, where he used to walk at that hour, he saw a woman washing herself in her own house. She was one of extraordinary beauty, and therein surpassed all other women. Her name was Bathsheba. So he was overcome by that woman's beauty, and was not able to restrain his desires, but sent for her and laid with her. Whereupon she conceived with child, and sent to the king, which was David, and he should contrive some way of concealing her sin. For according to the laws of their fathers, she who had been guilty of adultery ought to be put to death. So the king David sent for Joab's armor-bearer from the siege, who was the woman's husband, and his name was Uriah. Anybody notice the difference between what we read historically versus what we read now in the Masoretic text?
More detail.
Right. It was more detail. Okay, the question is, what was the detail? Anybody see a difference between?
She's trying to conceal her sin because she was supposed to die for it, or they both were supposed to die. I'm not sure what the question is, but
okay,
that's what I'm seeing off the bat.
2 Samuel 11, 2 and 5. Let's read that one more time. And then I'm going to read the book of Josephus, page 150, actually it's page 155. Because it's something I want us to see here.
He said for Uriah after he don't do what he did. He said for Uriah after he did what he did.
Absolutely. So one more time. If I can get Yekezikiel, chief officer, if he can read for me 2 Samuel 11, 2 and 5.
And it came to pass in an evening tide that Dawood arose from off his bed and walked upon the roof of the king's house. And from the roof he saw a woman washing herself, and the woman was very beautiful to look upon. And Dawood sent and inquired after the woman, and one said, Is not this Bathsheba the daughter of Eliam, the wife of Uriah the Hittite? And Dawood sent messengers, and took her, and she came in unto him, and he lay with her, for she was purified from her uncleanness, and she returned unto her house. And the woman conceived, and sent and told Dawood, and said, I am with child.
Right, hallelujah. So I'm going to read this real fast here. But David fell into a very grievous sin, though he was otherwise naturally a righteous and religious man, one that firmly observed the laws of our fathers. And for when late in the evening he took a view around him from the roof of his royal palace, where he used to walk at that hour, he saw a woman washing herself in her own house. She was one of extraordinary beauty, and therein surpassed the beauty of all of the women. Her name was Bathsheba. So he was overcome by the woman's beauty, and he was not able to restrain his desires, but sent for her and lay with her. What we should be saying here now is that it's said now, and you have it, you picked it up?
I picked up a difference because in the scripture it stated that she was the wife of Uriah the Hittite.
Right.
But in there it didn't.
Yeah, it did, but guess what happened now is that David, here is saying that David slept with her, not knowing that she was married. Afterwards, she now was accused of adultery. This is the way that it's reading here, and watch how it's written here. It says, where he used to walk at the hour, and he saw a woman washing herself in her own house. She was one of extraordinary beauty, therein surpassed all other women. Her name was Bathsheba. So he, David, was overcome by that woman's beauty, and was not able to restrain his desires, but sent for her, and then he laid with her. Whereupon she conceived with child, and sent to the king that he should contrive some way of concealing her sin. Yes, her sin. The way that it's written is being outlined here is that she didn't tell David that she was married. And she wanted David now to conceal her sin.
So that was the uncleanness it was talking about.
Well, her uncleanness now would have to have been, because that happened before. So that uncleanness now would have to have been from her nida at that point. So she's cleansing herself now, let's say from her nida. David now, who was supposed to have been with his men at war, because kings went to war with the rest of the army. They don't do like the presidents here now. They stay in the back home and all this other stuff. The kings actually went to war. David got lazy, he got relaxed, and he said, listen, you know what? Joab, Uriah, he had all these guys out there fighting the Philistines, and he's at home. And so we have a situation now where she's on the top of the roof. She just cleansed herself from Anita. David sees her, and David calls for her. David has intercourse with her. She becomes pregnant, and she wants David now to conceal, the act, because she's now pregnant. And let me just read it again. So was and he was able to whereupon she conceived with child, and she sent to the king that he should contrive some way of concealing her sin. And so David is going to now conceal a way to try to cover the sin. Oh, you're married. So what David now does now is that he puts Uriah on the front line. Okay, but this story gets very interesting. I mean, just take your time and read this, because there's a lot of things that we're going to see here that is not outlined in Scripture. Because this is, you see it up here now. Watch this now. Whereupon she conceived with child, whereupon she conceived with some way of concealing her sin, for according to the laws of their fathers, she who had been guilty of adultery ought to be put to death. So the king sent for Joab's armor-bearer from the siege, and he asked, who was the woman's husband? You see what's happening here now? He's asking, who is the woman's husband? And they found that his name was Uriah. So I just found that real interesting, Mr. McCarr, as we begin to go to 1 Kings, as we begin with the story. The next one I want to happen, if someone can read 1 Samuel, the 18th chapter, verses 12 to 30. If I can have Yashra'al to read that for me. 1 Samuel, the 18th chapter, 12 to 30, so I can speed this up.
Is it 12 and 13?
Yeah, 1 Samuel, the 18th chapter, verses 12 through 30.
Okay.
30.
Is that right? Yeah, 1 Samuel, the 18th chapter, verse 12 through 30.
All right. And Saul was afraid of David, because Yahuah was with him, and was departed from Saul. And Saul removed him from him. Therefore Saul removed him from him, and and made him his captain over 1,000. And he went out and came in before the people. And David behaved himself wisely in all his ways, and Yahuah was with him.
Mm-hmm.
Wherefore, when Shaul saw that he behaved himself very wisely, he was afraid of him. But all Israel and Judah loved David, because he went out and came in before them. And Shaul said to David, Behold, my elder daughter Merab.
Mm-hmm.
Her will I give thee to wife. Only be thou valiant for me, and fight Yahuah's battle. For Shaul said, Let not my hand be upon him, but let the hand of the Philistine be upon him.
Right, the hands of the Philistines, because we're talking about David now. Shaul now is going to actually give David one of his daughters here. But Shaul doesn't want to be responsible for the death of David. That will, right? Just make sure everybody's following along with the story. It's going to get interesting. Read on.
And David said to Shaul, Who am I, and what is my life, or my father's family in Israel, that I should be son-in-law to the king?
Mm-hmm.
But it came to pass at the time when Merab, Shaul's daughter, should be given to David, that she was given to Adriel, the Meholite, to wife. And Micah, Shaul's daughter, loved David, and they told Shaul, and the thing pleased him. And Shaul said, I will give him her, that she may be a snare to him, and the hand of the Philistine may be against him.
Right.
Wherefore Shaul said to David, Thou shalt this day be my son-in-law. Thou shalt this day be my son-in-law in the one and of the twain. And Shaul commanded his servants, saying, Come in with David secretly, and said, Behold, the king hath delight in thee, and all his servants love thee. Now therefore be the king's son-in-law. And Shaul's servants spake these words in the ear of David. And David said, Seemeth it to you a light thing to be a king's son-in-law, seeing that I am a poor man and lightly esteemed? And the servants of Shaul told him, saying, On this manner spake David. And Shaul said, Thus shall you say to David, The king desired not any jewelry, but 100 foreskin of a Philistine, and be avenged of the king's enemy. But Shaul thought to make David fall by the hands of the Philistine. And when his servants told David these words, it pleased David well to be the king's son-in-law. And the days were not expired. Wherefore David arose and went, he and his men, and slew of the Philistine 200 men. And David brought their foreskin, and gave them in full tale to the king, that he might be the king's son-in-law.
Hallelujah. Okay, let's stop here. So, we had talked about so many times before about the price for a virgin, right? 50 shekels. We have a situation where we have Shaul. Shaul has a daughter. This now puts this particular woman in a certain class. She is the daughter of a king. So the daughter of a king now, he can ask for any price. It was brought to my attention that as we're reading here in the Messianic text, that David was a poor man. But I'm going to have to speed this up. When you get time, you go to the book of Josephus, page 135, chapter 10, chapters 2 and 3. That's not what it said. All right? And again, per se, David was able to afford the dowry, but what happened now is that Shaul didn't want to make a merchandise of his daughter. We have a situation where it says that Shaul asked for 200 foreskins of dead Philistines, right? That was the bridal. 100? David gave him 200, right? So he said, listen, I'm going to go above and beyond, all right? So, this is what's interesting.
Can you give the page reference one more time?
Excuse me?
Can you give the page reference one more time?
Okay, this is going to be Antiquity of the Jews, page 135, chapter 10. It says, I'm just going to speed this thing up here a little bit. Josephus says thrice or three times in this chapter and twice afterwards, and Shaul did not ask for 100 foreskins of the Philistines, but 600 of their heads. The Septuagint have 100 foreskins, The Syriac and the Arabic have 200. Now these things were not foreskins with other copies, but heads, which Josephus copy seems somewhere probable from 1 Samuel, the 29th chapter, verse 4. The reason why I wanted to bring that out is that showing now historical writings and showing what's actually written in the Masoretic text, and we deal with translations here, because it was brought to my attention that, you know what, David couldn't afford the king's daughter, but actually he could if it was about money. And looking at what Shaul was actually trying to do, he didn't want to actually put David to death, because he did see that the father was actually working with David. Because remember, the women were saying, listen, you know what, Shaul killed, like thousands, but David his 10,000s, all right? So David was starting to get this great name. And actually now, Samuel had even said to Shaul that, listen, you know what, the father has departed from you, and he's going to now anoint another person now that's going to actually now follow the father's commandments, to the T. And this is where we see now the introduction where the father now is grooming David. But I just found it very interesting now as far as the dowry is concerned, where we now have someone having a translation saying that, listen, you know what, it was actually foreskin, but there are other copies, all right, letting us know that it was actually the heads. And again, what we said that we was going to do is that with our reading and breaking down the scriptures, what we're going to start doing now, we're going to start bringing out history along with scripture. We just want to make sure that every single thing that we're saying and that we're doing, we're saying, listen, you know what, this is the history behind it. Me personally, I'm never going to be in a situation where I'm saying something and I'm not aware of other writings. So I like to be well-rounded in everything that I'm doing. That way, I'm never trapped. I never want to be in a big audience of people and say, well, listen, you know what? According to ancient records, that supersedes what you're reading now is saying this. Because some people can be very tedious with their teachings. And so that's just the way that I do things, all right? And we only have about 4 minutes left, right? About 4 minutes.
4 minutes and some seconds.
What I'm going to have to do, because I don't even want to get into that, because it's going to take way too much time. Are there any questions? Anything that anybody?
I think what you just said makes perfect sense, because I think about it, Israelites don't touch men like that,
Yeah.
I'd rather cut off the head than a foreskin and bring it to the king, so that makes sense to me.
Yeah, it do, because when we begin to look at wars in Israel, it was always the heads that they were wanting, not running around pulling down men's pants, and that was.
Heads will roll. He said heads will roll.
Yeah. It was always about cutting off the head. That was always the sign or the signal. That's what we were looking for. So. Yes.
So in Genesis 3 and 9,
Mm-hmm.
you were saying Adam was not conscious, unconscious, when he was saying to the father that he was naked.
Right.
So when the father bred life into Adam,
Right.
wasn't that making him conscious? So down the road, when he and Eve did the sin, why he's not conscious? Because now he knows it's a sin.
Right. And so it says, now the man has become like us to know both good and evil. So now man knows repercussions. And so how did he now get back into covenant relationship with the Father? Because, again, the whole thing now is that when you sin, you become, he's conscious of the sin, but what we're looking at now is now your relationship now with the Father has changed. And being that your relationship with the Father has changed, all right, you now become like this unconscious being, because remember, there's a whole lot of things that happen. Adam even got to the point now where he tried to, the Hebrew word for, and when you look it up, for naked is aroma. So who told you that you were naked? So we now have Adam in a situation where he's trying to cover himself, but that word naked, keep it in this Hebraic perspective. I use another, something like that. Before your ish, you're naked. Not meaning naked that you didn't have any clothes, but he can actually see you. Clothes hide who you are. But in order to see you, and who told you now that you were naked? Because when you're naked now, I can see you. But when you clothe yourself, you're now hiding. And so what Adam was actually doing, because remember, he took the fig leaves and he tried to cover their nakedness. So we now see a situation where the sin is even getting greater because you're not taking it upon yourself, where there was a point now where I was able to have this relationship with you where I can see you. You're now trying to cover yourself. And so I'm now going to say, where are you? And again, I know where you are, but I can see now. You ever see like when your children lie to you? There's another covering that they have where before you can see them, but their countenance begin to fall. Their facial expressions begin to fall. Their speech, their vocabulary, everything begins to fall. So now they're in an unconscious state because when a person lies, their character changes. They're different now. They look dead. You ever catch a person in a lie? They look dead because you got me. Even now, when Hashatan was, and we get into that a little later, when Hashatan was kicked from out of Shamayim, his physical appearance changed. Because when you go in the presence of the Father, your appearance changes. Moshe goes up to the top of the mount, his appearance changes. He has this glow, he has this illumination about himself. He changes. And when you're not in the presence of the Father, you don't have that glow, that energy. You're no longer under the covering of the Father. You have the Mashiyach doing the same thing. The Mashiyach now goes up, I think it was Peter, James, and it was another brother. He goes up to the top of the mount and he transfigures before them. And they see now his esteem, where he's now what we call an enlightened being. And so now when you're disconnected from the Father, that glow now, it falls. It's like a dead glow. And one more example, even when Ezekiel, in the 37th chapter, made mention that the valley of dry bones, remember? Now, the people were alive. They were walking around, but they were dead. They didn't have that ruach. They didn't have that set apart spirit about themselves. And this is when he said, well, listen, can these dry bones live? The only way that these dry bones could live, it tells us in the book of Ezekiel that the Father would have to do what? Breathe life into them, which goes back now to Genesis, the first chapter and the second chapter.